So I'm Chris Miller. I am the Executive Director of the Honors Program. I'm really excited to be here. In fact, one member of our Faculty Advisory Board, Katie Krause, who's sitting right here, had the great idea that we should present about honors and how to get engaged with honors as a teacher and mentor at this conference, and we're really excited to be here. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what honors is, how it works a little bit, but not too much, and I'm happy to answer questions later. Hi, Chris. He's also presenting on this panel. And then we're going to hear from some faculty, all these faculty who have had different kinds of experiences and overlapping experiences in the honors program. They'll just tell you a little bit about that, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions and how to get involved kind of thing as well. Some of you are maybe even already involved. Okay, so the motto of the honors program comes from the poet Horace in Latin. It's sapere aude, which means dare to know. And it's not a challenge to gather information and hoard it for yourself or regurgitate it on a test or whatever. It's a challenge to students to try to be curious, to really have questions and look for answers to them, to be passionate about what they wonder about, and to try to investigate it, to be creative and thoughtful in how they solve problems, to be collaborative in problem solving. So we're looking for students who, with a growth mindset, if you can't already notice that, we want them to be resilient and have some courage when they're challenged. Tries to create space for that, for a little risk-taking, and we want them to engage and be connected to their communities, in plural, whatever communities they're part of. Honors is one way that students can find a sense of belonging at a big university like this. My own personal background was at a big university, and honors was a kind of a grounding thing for me there, and so it's become a bit of a passion of mine. So this passion and this dare to know is for faculty as well as for students. We are definitely looking for faculty who have that kind of curiosity, who want to work with students, who bring a spark to the room, and so that's kind of why we're here. We have a points-based curriculum instead of just credits because we want to give students space to take those kinds of risks. I'll talk a little bit about how that works, but it's mostly about applying what they learn in class outside the classroom, so that's where the mentoring aspect of it comes in. So just who we are and how many people are involved with us. We have between 600 and 700 students in the honors program currently. Ideally, we would want to grow that. It's about 2.6% of the undergraduate population here. A lot of our peer institutions in the West have up to 10% of students involved. It'd be so cool if. So that's kind of a goal, but not for right now. All colleges and most departments and majors are represented in our student body. About 200 faculty engage with honors each year, and we have over 1,000 engaged alumni. And we engage them with mentoring of students and as a kind of a network for students, so that's been a really cool aspect of being involved with the program. These flyers I gave to ETE. I hope that they're then available for you. This is a flyer we use to recruit new students, like high school students. We also have one for current students because students can join this program up to the beginning of their junior year. So a lot of times students don't hear about honors or their parents aren't talking about it all the time. Some of those students who faculty see in their classes are some of the best fits for the honors program. So we are looking for students who have that kind of growth mindset, honestly. What we tell students about why it's beneficial to be an honors student are about the community and the network. Faculty, students, and alumni. Cool to meet other honor students in different disciplines. Because it's a university-wide program, and we have students in most departments and most majors, every college, they can develop that kind of community. We have honors events and stuff like that too. Growing academically and professionally, that's sort of the application of the learning. The program, because it's points-based, maps onto any major, so I'll talk about how that works in a minute a little bit. And basically we support them. So we have funding for students, both scholarships and research and study abroad funding, up to $5,000 per student. They apply for that. There's no extra fee to be in honors, and we have honors only scholarships for students as well. In terms of the benefits to faculty, hopefully the faculty we're talking about are going to talk about some of those benefits. So I'm not going to dwell on the teaching, which Julia is going to talk about, or the mentoring, which the other three are going to talk about in some capacity. But I do want to mention briefly the idea of promotion and tenure documentation. When we became a university-wide program, we got it into code that work with honors counted toward promotion and tenure, and faculty can ask us at any time to give them a resume of their work in honors, and so whatever you've done, we'll map it out in a kind of a standardized form that the central committee recognizes. You can include that with your dossier. So that's one reason, hopefully not the only reason, but one reason you might want to engage with honors. And we also try to give faculty a kind of a sense of community across disciplines. I know when I was just in the English department, which I was for a really long time, I knew a lot of people in the English department, but we were just talking about this beforehand. You don't necessarily meet other people outside your discipline, and it's a good way, honors is a great way to meet other faculty and students outside your discipline. So the points-based curriculum, I just want you to have a basic sense of how this works. Throughout their time, so that co-curricular cornerstone, throughout their time in the honors program, students can attend any event in campus, in the community, on campus, in the community, on any campus. It's a statewide program. I should definitely make that clear. And they reflect on how that attendance at that event, it can be a football game, it can be an academic talk, it can be whatever, and they think about how that made an impact on their educational experience. Honor students reflect on pretty much everything they do, and we just did exit interviews, and when we were talking to the students, they were like, at first I really hated all that reflection, but then now I actually have a story about what my college education meant, and I actually appreciate the reflection. So go reflection. The rest of the curriculum kind of builds from courses, which Julie's going to talk about. We offer some gen ed courses and also sections of honor sections in the major of different kinds of courses. Honors in practice is where students apply what they learn in the class outside the classroom. So this is like research, study abroad, internships, the book labs Chris is going to talk about, and then they all do a capstone project. So they can design a project and work with a faculty mentor on that, and Elizabeth is going to talk about that in a minute. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Julia, and you can tell, you got introduced, but you could tell them who you are, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about honors teaching. Okay. Yes, and you need the microphone.
This is going to sound a little bit like, catch-22. All the questions, wait till the end.
I don't care. If you have a question, you could ask it now if you want to, or
like 3 or 4, but I don't want to detract. I didn't know if it would just be better to
wait until the end, and then we'll see if they get answered, and we'll have tons of time at the end for questions.
All right, so as Chris said, I'm Julia Gossard. I am an associate professor of history. I taught in the honors program for 6 years. So I started teaching in the honors program in my second year here. And I will say, so I did 2, I don't know what we call them, rotations in the honors program. So I applied for the first one, did 3, and then Chris called me and said, would you be interested? And I was like, yes, on the other end of the phone, like on mute, and I was like, I will think about this opportunity, Chris, and I will get back to you.
You aren't fooling it.
I taught one of the breadth level humanities courses, Honors 1320, which I titled Revolution, and it actually has an exclamation point in it. I'm proud of that for the course catalog. Reacting to Atlantic revolutions. So I taught the history of the American, the French, and the Haitian Revolution to primarily first, second, some third and fourth year students as well, with their breadth humanities credit that was there. I really wanted to experiment with a program, and it was called Reacting to the Past. It is a well-developed, well-known pedagogical curriculum in history in particular, which basically it's a giant role-play game. So they put students into moments of particular historical crisis, American Revolution, French Revolution, and they ask them to adopt characters. And while in character, they have to read, canonical texts in their field. So Revolution, right? They're reading John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, right? The founding documents. But that they are the founders themselves, which is very interesting. They have to stage negotiations and stage debates. So in the French Revolution game, they are essentially drafting the Constitution of 1791, so the very first Constitution. Someone gets to play the king, somebody plays the nobility, somebody plays the clergy, somebody plays sort of the Jacobins, and all of the other many different political factions that existed during that time, and the many biases. In the American Revolution game, they play just the Loyalists and the Patriots. It's not quite as many different options that are there. But this opportunity really engages students in a very unique way. Suddenly they're taken out of their experience as this 21st century college student, and they're being asked as a particular character to interpret the evidence in front of them. And I spend a lot of time getting to know these students, and these are pretty small classes. It's, 25 students at most, so I get the opportunity to get to know them, see what their personalities are like, and ask them, what do you think about the American Revolution? And I will tell you every single time that the student is like, I love the American Revolution, I want to play a patriot, sends me a meme of a eagle flying, right? I am like, you are a loyalist. So sorry, you have been assigned a loyalist. And I do this to really get them to challenge their worldview and to start thinking about the fact that these moments in history were not preordained. It wasn't kind of created from the beginning of time. Of course the American Revolution was going to happen. No, this is a series of choices. This is a series of events that happened. Made the choice, in the case of the French Revolution, not always the greatest of choices, right? It's 10 years of a very bloody revolution, and then we get Napoleon, right? So it's not always the greatest choices. But I want students to see how individual people played roles in that. And through that, they're gaining media literacy. They're gaining critical thinking skills. They're gaining the ability also to just simply communicate with one another. I think that that's something I saw throughout the 6 years, especially as I moved to teaching online, that students were really starting to struggle with. And so one of the things, Chris had up here that these courses teach college level thinking. I, of course, wanted them to know the subject and the content that was there, right? But I also wanted them to think about critical thinking. I also wanted them to communicate with each other. So I taught, these are all pictures from the time I taught in person. So you can see sometimes these debates got very heated. The students are standing on rolling chairs. Don't tell any, nobody here is from risk management, right? Okay. They will get into these characters. This is Lafayette and Danton from the French Revolution. They are screaming at each other, and they are quoting Rousseau while doing so, which was mind-boggling to me. These are honor students, right? They tended to be a little bit more engaged, right? A little bit more wanting to prove to me that they did the reading, which I personally really loved, right? They're quoting Rousseau to each other. They're explaining, they're making an argument about this philosophical document that we wouldn't have had in class, right? It's like, Sara, what do you think about Rousseau? You'd be like, oh, here's this. They're yelling at each other. And it's a productive yelling at each other, right? This is a really great opportunity to see the way that they have engaged with that material. I think through this experience, I learned a lot about how students engage with the material, think through analysis. How do I teach analysis to students? How do I teach them bias? That's something that I really struggled with. So this is a great opportunity for me, especially as an early career scholar, to really get that experience of trying a new type of pedagogy. And my students were also excited to try it with me. They knew that this was new. They knew it was weird. I always had one or two at the start of the semester where I'd be like, we're going to do this game. And they were like, bye, I'm not doing this game. And I was like, that is totally fine. But they were willing to explore with me. And I think through that experience, they started to see how unique their honors experience was. So I did this for 3 years in person. And then COVID happened. So I moved my course. Chris invited me to do it online through Zoom. I said, how am I going to do this highly interactive game on Zoom? And I went to multiple professional development workshops. I kind of figured it out, and I actually ended up really liking the Zoom version way better because the students would show up in character. They got powdered wigs, tri-corner hat. They put New York. One of them had, like a filter that they looked like they were very, injured and scurvied, right? That was there. I loved it. And for those students, especially that class of 2020 that I taught, they they suddenly were getting to see how they were going to communicate with each other in a digital landscape. So they're having to stage negotiations both on Zoom, but then I engaged with them on Slack as well. So I thought about a different sort of transferable skill that I could teach these students of, you're going to use this in the workplace, here's how you communicate via a chat app and a kind of team networking app. And I gave them channels, and it was really, really successful. And in fact, those Zoom students, especially that year, created a D&D, a Dungeons and Dragons little group that they would meet together with weekly. And they kind of stayed in the teams that they were in, which I found very funny. But this was a way in a moment where we were so disconnected, and many of the students kept on being quarantined in their dorm rooms, right, or isolated from others, that they actually had built friendships even in that Zoom space. And that was an opportunity that then, once we did it once, we kind of thought about this opportunity to open up statewide. And how can we get statewide students to experience this very unique learning opportunity? And for me as an educator, so I started that in my second year. I did that through until last year, so my first or second year as an associate professor. And through that experience, I had this really great narrative and a really great reflection on how I started as a very junior person, learning all about pedagogy, getting to basically play with all of my pedagogical elements with honor students who understood why I was playing with the pedagogy and were open and receptive to that. So teaching in the honors program is really great if you want to try these kinds of experiential projects, especially at that 1,000 level. But it's also an opportunity to get to know these students, have the smaller classes. The other classes I teach, I have 180 students in one, in other ones I have 40, 50, so I don't get to know them as much. This is a real opportunity. I still have those students emailing me, hey, Dr. G, I got this job, or, oh, I'm watching the Paris Olympics. Did you see the hard metal band playing on the Conciergerie with Marie Antoinette's head? That was awesome. I wish we had that when we were playing the game. And I'm like, me too. Me too. So this is a really great, I think, experience to get to know your students, get to try out new teaching methods, and have really engaged students who are there, who want to learn. Now, is it 100% of students who are like, I'm going to get an A every time, yay? No, but that's okay. Right? These are students who tend to be, I think, a little bit more engaged, want that experience. So it was easier for me to be a little goofy in my teaching. So, all right.
Thank you, Julia. Honors is meant to be a sandbox, and honestly, if you can then take things out of honors and scale them in larger classes or bring them into your other teaching, all the better. So next we'll hear from Sara Freeman.
All right. Let's see. What's the best way to do this? All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Sara Freeman. I'm an assistant professor in the biology department. I was reflecting on what exactly I would say, because I've worn a number of different hats in the honors program over the last few years. I started out as a capstone mentor for an honors student who was doing research in my laboratory. I'm a neuroscientist. I study how hormones act in the brain to affect social behavior primarily, although that can take a number of different forms. And from working as a capstone and then also as a mentor for some what are they called, mentoring agreements, basically a lot of these honors in practice types of activities that students can do to earn their points and do experiential learning outside the classroom. I ended up going from there as the department honors advisor, and now I sit on the honors faculty advisory board for the College of Science. So I'm sort of speaking in an point of view from students that are doing primarily empirical research projects in the sciences. I know there's a lot of different honors that takes different forms in practice in the humanities and social sciences and the arts. So I may not be able to respond to questions in that particular realm, but from my experience in the sciences, I was kind of trying to think, like, what do I boil down type of message would I want to give to you who I assume are here to learn more about how to get involved. And I was thinking about kind of, why am I an academic? Like, what do I get out of this job? Why am I doing this and not being a scientist for industry or biotech or pharmaceuticals? Why am I an educator? Why am I in higher education? And it's these kinds of experiences with engaged learners that the honors program provides for this particular student population that I find to be the most rewarding and the sort of the reason why I love my job. And so if you share my feelings as academics and instructors that you want to work with students who challenge you, who like rise to the occasion, like Julia was just talking about, like you give them, let's try this new thing, let's do this, let's like really think together about some new way to answer a question, ask a question, learn a new technical skill. These are the kinds of students that you want to be around, that you want to work with. So most of the mentoring that I've been engaged with is getting them into the laboratory and challenging them to learn a new technical skill, to learn how to ask a research question, how to draft a poster, how to present work, and how to kind of scaffold that into one of these honors and practice experiences through these mentoring agreements. So the students do have to fill out some forms and proposals and say, how is this going to sort of add to their educational experience? I think some people, I don't know, not complain, but reflect that there's some paperwork involved, but I have found that it's very helpful and keeps even the mentors and the students accountable to know what is the expectation, what like hours of workload are you both agreeing to put in. So from the faculty side, like in order to actually sign the paper that says I'm going to serve as a honors mentor for this, experiential practice, everyone has to agree on an estimate of how long this is going to take. It's actually really helpful and it increases the transparency of what's expected on both sides. So the student's not going to end up in a situation where they're in too deep or they're feeling overwhelmed, and the faculty member's not like, what am I signing up for? So anyway, there's a lot of different ways forms this can take. Like I said, I'm in the biology department, but I have had biology honors students propose mentoring agreements that involve huge event on campus because they're the president of the student association, and they're going to reflect on how this has improved their organizational skills, their time management skills, their interpersonal skills, whatever it might be, and then sometimes their reflections even link that back to what they want to do as a future physician or something that links back to their biology major, even though the actual honors mentoring in practice was completely unrelated to the study of the biology of life, right? So it's a really nice way also as an academic, like Chris had said at the beginning, to build community as faculty members. We often get siloed in our departments, and I have found a lot of really beautiful connections through the people I've met through the honors program, and I know the students do too. And so it's just a really, really, really neat way. If you have a project idea that you would like to engage a student on, or vice versa, sometimes students have ideas and they're like, is there a faculty member out there who might help me through this proposal idea? Like, how can I turn this into reality? So there's sort of this neat give and take where you could try to sort of recruit a student to a project you need hands for, or vice versa. So I'm happy to answer questions. I just wanted to give a rough overview. I don't know if that's really all the things that you wanted to talk about, but it's an extremely, extremely rewarding experience, and I have to say most of these students operate as if they are master students. It's like I feel like I'm working with master students. I don't feel like I'm working with undergrads, and some of them are sophomores, freshmen. I mean, they're an incredible population of students.
Thank you.
Yep.
To the paperwork point. Students have to do proposals when they go outside of outside of being undergrads, right? And they have to document the completion of a project. This is not out of line. I'm just going to say it. Okay. Before our next speaker goes, I have to tell you what what the actual category of thing that he's going to talk about is. So we have these things called honors book labs. Some of you may have been involved in them, but others not. They're a really, really cool thing, and I think we're one of the only universities that does this, so I'm super proud of it. It's basically like a book club, and faculty can propose any book that they want to talk about with students. We buy all the books for students and faculty. We have a little showcase, and faculty talk about what they're going to do, and students decide on when to sign up. And then Honor schedules a 1 hour a week meeting for the group, just in the weeks 2 through 5 of the term. So you meet 4 times with 4 to 5 honor students and talk about the book. And then there's no grading, no evaluative work at all. You walk away. The students write a reflection on how the book lab met honors learning outcomes. So did they get some kind of new ideas? Did they have cross-disciplinary conversation? Did they think critically? Did they engage with their community or think about engaging with their community differently? And then I read those reflections. They upload them in our huge Canvas course where they get all their points. And then we download them and put them together and send them to the faculty so you can see what a huge impact you made on these students. It's just, I love it. It's gorgeous. Anyway, Chris Babits is going to speak a little bit about his experience with this.
Thank you. So I was just counting up how many honors book labs I've led, and it's 7 so far. Nice. And the 8th and the 9th will happen this year. So I love it. I went to a small liberal arts college, and I was lazy in high school, and I fell in love with learning in college because of the intellectual stimulation of reading and discussing and doing things. I did like science too, just for our scientists here, but my one science class was the science of weapons of mass destruction. We blew things up, so how could you not like that? But it provides an opportunity for these extraordinarily accelerated, motivated, smart students to learn together about a topic of common interest in a low-stakes environment. And they really come alive because I think a lot of Gen Z, emerging Gen Alpha in college, they're really stressed out by grades, right? So this gives them an opportunity to actually get together to discuss things that they're interested in and that I'm also interested in. And so I'm a trained historian. I have a PhD in history. I'm not a faculty member, so maybe we break some rules with me for me leading these? No?
Other staff people do this.
Okay. And I've led book clubs on things like a book called No Games for Boys to Play, which is about the mental health implications of youth football. And one of the students in there joined it because she hates sports. And she wanted talking points for why sports are bad. But it was phenomenal. She was a very active participant. It had a lot of history of health and medicine in it. But then we also have tied them together with some visiting speakers. So I think now almost 2 years ago, we had Susan Stryker, the preeminent historian on trans history, come and speak to campus. But we also offered book labs, and we invited those honor students to meet Susan Stryker. And they said it was amazing to have that opportunity. And Chris put this up here because starting last year when I was in the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, they're trying to make me in every unit, I think, on campus. Give me 5 more years and I think I will be everything. I'll join you in the College of Science and in engineering. We started a free speech book lab because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about free speech. And our students are actively thinking about this, especially because of social media, cancel culture, and things like HB 261, which is the anti-DEI law, actually requires universities to do more on free speech. And so I'm a historian, love the First Amendment for many different reasons. I wanted our students to have the opportunity to engage with this. So this fall they'll read a book just about free speech on campuses. And it's a little bit of the history. It's an updated version for as of 6 months ago. And so they'll be really at the forefront of knowing this. And a lot of the students, you know, they're engineering or bio majors, they're really accelerated. They don't really have the time in their schedule to take one of my awesome classes I offer here. And this provides them an entryway. And this would also be, I think Sarah, you were talking pretty much about your gateway drug version of getting into the honors program. This is like the gateway version, the easiest one, reading, introducing yourselves to students and becoming involved with it. And they really do want to talk about this. Chris and I were joking this morning, the students will be like, well, I wasn't expecting to read every word of this book, but I did. And that is so fascinating. And I'm like, you still did your homework, right? And they're like, yeah, of course. So it's just a wonderful get to know students, ask them questions about their major. I don't know so much about that too, so you can really see a good swath of what students are doing, what they're interested in, and I've kind of used that to shape some of my own curriculum for the classes I teach, because now I know more about the students who come to Utah State. And like Julia, I used to teach 180 to 200 person online asynchronous class, so it's nice to get to know some students very closely. And it maxes out at 5 students per book lab. You meet 3 or 4 times, and you really do get to know them. And those reflections are wonderful to read about how thoughtful they have been throughout this entire process for the book that you select. I think we're holding questions.
We're going to go through everybody's thing.
Yeah.
Yep. Hold your questions. We can't bend the rules at this point. Okay. So thanks, Chris. Next, we're going to hear from Elizabeth Vargis talking about honors capstone mentoring.
Okay. All right. Hi. Hi. I am an associate professor in biological engineering. I have the same gateway into honors where I started working with students. Then Chris was like, do more, become a departmental honors advisor. So I sign off on every honors student, honors in practice agreement. And then I started having capstone students, and now she's recruited me as the engineering representative for the faculty advisory board. So maybe this is like a don't become involved in honors. Like you do there.
Start with you.
Yeah, then you get out and you go somewhere else. No, I'm here because I love this. I love working with these students. I signed up to do honors connections classes. I mean, like, I'm all in, okay? So I'm going to just talk about the capstone. So to graduate with honors, the students are required to do a capstone. It's 5 points. And so a capstone is a long-term project. So I think it takes 2 semesters. I don't know if there's an actual requirement on that. But it's, as Sara said, it's something that the students clear information on the website, on all the forms for the student and the mentor to understand what a capstone entails. So from my experience in engineering students are already required to do capstones to graduate in engineering. So it's called the senior design. It's also a 2-semester process. And so it has been a challenge for some of those students to understand how to have a separate honors capstone. So I'm just going to describe the experience that I've had with my students. So the honors program has made it quite straightforward to have an engineering capstone and do an honors capstone at the same time, so students don't have to do a double capstone. But a lot of students feel like that's kind of difficult, and so they take a pathway that I think many students in honors do anyway. So these students have been involved in research, and sometimes these research projects have been happening over multiple semesters. They've gotten funding from honors to do ERCOs. They've been, scholars in their own departments, and then they take that and do a capstone on it. So they continue on that foundation of research that they've already been doing, and then they do a longer project. So the honors program runs a capstone design proposal course, so they have all the information they need in order to now propose a capstone. So that's, to me, very straightforward. But we have students who have also done, most recently in my department, she did a capstone on what is biological engineering. She developed a magazine. And so that is not an engineering capstone project, but it is a perfect honors capstone project because she could take everything that she learned as an engineering student and then communicate that and tell other people, here's how biological engineering is different from chemical, biomedical, here's how we fit, here are the types of activities we do, and then create a magazine. It's not just something that lives on a website or something. Like, she had to do all of that work, which was outside of anything that we taught her in engineering. The honors program has a capstone session at the Student Research Symposium in the spring, and that is just like the accumulation of all those different types of projects is just fantastic. So I wasn't able to go this year. I went the first year, and the student from the business school had her greeting card business, right? And so of course that should be a capstone. And so I think for me, for students, especially when I teach them as a connection student and they're here on campus and they kind of think about the paperwork and the points and all this stuff, I tell them they're already going to be doing these things. This student would have made her company and like developed these cool greeting cards regardless. So why not take 10, 15 extra minutes, think about how you're going to do this process, reflect after you're done, and then get those honors points, because most of them are doing this anyway. And so the capstone to me is just a really great end to the honors program, and it kind of, it might feel like a burden, but all of the students who have done it feel like this was the perfect way for me to show off what I've been able to do as an honor student at USU.
Great, thank you. Finally, it's time for questions, at last. And I can bring the microphone to people if you want to, ask your question and for posterity's sake. Okay, Sarah.
Sure. So my question is for Chris. I'm curious, what do your book labs look like? Like, do you structure them as students lead part of the discussion? Do you provide all discussion prompts? How do you structure those book labs? You mentioned that you bring in maybe some of the content you might be teaching in your other courses, or I'm just curious what they look like.
Well, I actually break it up, the book, into equal parts, and I tell students to come with 3 questions or topics that they want to talk about during that. So I make it as much on the onus of the students. Okay, for my classes, I'll write out discussion guides and things like that, but I don't do that for honors because the students don't need that, and I want them to guide it, and I keep them flexible. I know that Raymond, who is one of the assistant or associate deans in King College of the Arts, they actually split the book up because he teaches a giant book. That would be maybe a challenge for me even to get through in the time, and has the students pick the chapters that they want to lead, and it becomes that student-centered in that way. So it's very flexible. So Raymond, they never read the full book either. It's always students picking the chapters that are most interesting. So some people ask the students to read the whole book for the first meeting. And so really it does depend upon what the book is and what you could do and structure the rest of your sessions for.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and people do all different things, right? There was one on Ready Player One, that novel that's about VR, and they went over to the VR lab and did that as one of their sessions. There was one on Alice in Wonderland, and they went down into the steam tunnels, so they were going down the rabbit hole. But yeah, you can do, the sky's the limit. It's a sandbox. Play around with it. I know you have a question because you have. Okay.
Just go. All right. So, I'm loud. Are we recording and you need me to do it? Okay, well then, yeah.
Do it.
Sounds good. So, sort of got answered, I think. I'm at a statewide campus, Twilla. I have heard in the past that honors doesn't apply at the statewide campuses. It sounds like that is not the case. Is that a recent change, or was I misinformed before? And how do we make that happen?
I can't speak to whether you were misinformed. It's been going on for since before the pandemic. We started a task force right before the pandemic. We started on 3 campuses. So we started in Brigham City, Price, and the Uinta Basin. And Ben has been our kind of point person in the Uinta Basin. And then during and after the pandemic, we have been trying to recruit students on those campuses. I've been trying to make it clear, when I present a faculty senate, that, yeah, it's for all campuses now. Any student on any campus can apply to the honors program. And this year, we're starting to recruit for an associate degree. So 2-year students can apply to do sort of a half of the points kind of thing. And then if they transfer into a 4-year program, it'll just transfer with them. So in terms of, I think there's a lack of understanding. Our advisors met with statewide advisors and explained this to them. I'm meeting with the statewide AVPs to talk to them about some of this stuff coming down the pipe. But it's really just a matter of, like, now you're here, so now tell people in Tooele.
So, next question. Do you need a point of contact in Tooele?
Sure.
Okay, done.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Let's just stand like this.
If someone else, I'm not going to hog it. If someone else has a question, because I have a couple and I'll hang around afterward if I need to, but if there's others who got it, go for it.
You want another one?
Can I?
Yeah. How about this person, and then you can come back.
My question is actually for Chris again. Could you give
the gateway.
Could you give us some more examples of books that you've read with your students? That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, so I told you about the free speech book that was up there. We have free speech on campus. We read a giant book called Reagan Land by Rick Perlstein, and the students were very shocked that Reagan signed liberalization laws for abortion. It was not what was being talked about at the RNC. So that was like a thing that they we read an overview of transgender history in the United States. We also read in one of them a book called Charity and Sylvia about same-sex marriage in the early American Republic in Vermont. The students made some Vermont jokes about that. Like, of course, it's Vermont, not like North Carolina. But and so I'm a historian of psychology, religion, and sexuality. So you can start to see kind of how those reflect my interests. Another thing about that is the Honors Book Lab is a great lab for testing out books that might work in the classes you teach. So I teach, or might not work, yeah. And so I saw limitations. I love this book called Charity and Sylvia, but I saw limitations for maybe a discussion in like a class because there was some awkward, it's very narrative and the students loved reading it, but it was tougher to talk about and kind of parse. And so that's why I kind of moved towards political stuff and that the students wanted to really talk about. But that's my limitations maybe as a teacher.
And is it okay to, is it actually okay, thank you, to get, to approach those non-approachable, themes that we're not supposed to even talk about in the classroom? You actually do that?
Right, so the students are opting into these, they're signing up.
Yeah, and I do, as somebody who was in the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, want to point out that HB 261 protects academic freedom, and you should feel comfortable, and you should teach exactly how and what you want to teach because you are the content expert. That's the stop.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's a discussion, right? So, yeah, open it. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes, and I once again have a question for Chris.
Other people have done book labs.
I'm sorry. Okay, Chris or anyone that has done book labs. So I'm curious, are they centered only in written text? Would there be a possibility to do a book lab around film or other forms of media?
I better answer it. The possibilities are endless. No, there has not been one on something else, and there definitely could be. There was one on an opera libretto, and then the students went to the opera. There was one that was on a book that was related to a musical that was going to be going, and so they then went together to the musical. But yeah, film would be great.